Chapter 796, Slowly Becoming Proficient.
Not good.
Emlyn White traced Argos's gaze and realized that he had forgotten to deal with the old newspapers and the tiny wooden chest. Although they were part of the room, they were placed in different parts of the room. Now they were put together, making it appear rather odd. It was as though someone had wanted to do something with them before having to give up for the time being. Then, why would there be a need to give up? Was the person alarmed by the knocking of the door? That means that the murderer hadn't left and is hiding in a particular corner of the room? Similar thoughts flashed in Argos's and Emlyn's mind at the same time. However, one of them was feeling perplexed, while the other was reverse inferring the other party's thoughts.
No good.
The two vampires reacted at the same time as Argos lunged to the side as he emitted thick black gases that resembled a bat's wing. As for Emlyn White, his finger quickly swiped across the open Lemano's travels. Suddenly, a silver hue appeared, illuminating the room again. The lightning that branched out didn't hit Argos and ended up hitting the ground beside the bed. It broke up into countless thin bolts that snaked towards conductive materials. Here, the wing, which Argos used thick black gases to create, seemed to attract the lightning. It was pursued by the snaking lightning as they struck him, spreading across his body. Argos became numb for a second and crashed down to the ground before he could leap up. Emlyn hurriedly flipped through Lemano's travels and once again slid his finger across a lightning strike page. Although he didn't know why there were so many pages of lightning strike, with them taking up nearly half of the yellowish-brown goatskin, he was overjoyed that he could keep using them. The silver bolts of lightning crashed down, smiting Argos, causing his body to emit black smoke despite having just recovered from his numbed state. Failing to leap away, his body began to convulse uncontrollably. Seizing this opportunity, Emlyn White bent his knee and leaped forward with his feet, approaching Argos with afterimages trailing behind him. Then, he wrapped his right arm around Target's head, easily flashing behind him. "Kacha!" Argos directly saw his back. His eyes filled with blood as the few festering parts on his face burst open as deep and illusory darkness poured out from inside. Emlyn had no idea what had happened. He slid backward instinctively as he kept changing his positioning. Argos didn't pursue him as his eyes lost their rationality. All that was left was pure malicious intent, madness, and clear blankness. He raised his hands and pressed them against his head before forcefully twisting it, allowing it to return to its normal orientation with a crisp crack. And around this artificial vampire, the darkness surged as though it wanted to devour everything. Then Argos stretched his neck from side to side as his body swelled and oozed out disgusting pus. He had come to Gallus Kevin tonight because his body had shown signs of losing control. There was a need to discuss a solution. He returned midway because he suddenly came to a realization that perhaps the harsh environment had caused intense negative effects to him due to his extraordinary sense of smell and sensitivity, thus resulting in him having signs of losing control. And at that moment he completely broke down with the shadow of death hanging over him. He had lost control. Emlyn White's heart palpitated when Argos swept his gaze across him. He felt that he had encountered trouble again, as he couldn't help but curse the primordial moon's believers for often making themselves into monsters. He didn't immediately pray to Mr. Fool for two reasons. First, there wasn't any time as his opponent was about to launch an attack. Second, in a one-on-one situation, Emlyn believed that it wasn't too dangerous dealing with a Sequence 7 rampager. He made every second count by flipping through Lemano's travels quickly, letting it land on the page with lightning strike again. Pa! Thick, distorted bolts of silver lightning smote down heavily as it flailed its claws, striking the mutated Argos. At that moment, the lightning seemed to shatter the surging darkness, but it also seemed to be devoured by it. The two vanished at the same time, leaving behind Argos, who had finally locked his sights onto Emlyn. This artificial vampire who had lost control produced afterimages as he pounced towards his target. Emlyn crouched down and rolled, dodging the lethal strike. At the same time, he reached his free right hand into his pocket and took out a metal bottle. Bam! As Argos quickly turned around, he instantly appeared near his enemy. Pa! Without any time to remove the cover, Emlyn clenched his fingers, pinching open a crack in the metal bottle. Then he threw the bottle ahead, letting the pure and radiant liquid inside splatter towards the approaching Argos. This was sun water, which he had concocted with his spirituality. It was extremely strong against vampires.
This was the preparation that a potions professor had to do in advance.
Being splashed by the liquid, Argos let out a blood-curdling scream. Wisps of black smoke billowed from his body as he lost his strength in midair. Bang! Although he collided with Emlyn, he failed to make him lose his balance. Emlyn tumbled twice but didn't suffer any actual damage. While tumbling, Emlyn ignored managing his injuries. He swatted his right hand, which had made contact with a few drops of sun water, and quickly flipped Leimano's travels. Pah! Another bolt of silver lightning smote down, causing Argos's tragic cries to come to an end. This vampire, who had lost control, had appeared to be suffering the radiance of the sun from a close distance as he fell into a state of intense paralysis. Emlyn seized this opportunity and took out another bottle of sun water. He unscrewed the cap and poured it towards his opponent. This time, Argos didn't even manage to let out a cry. His body began to melt like wax. It was only then that Emlyn heaved a sigh of relief. He then conjured a thick black fog behind him, turning it into illusory bats the size of a palm as they swarmed towards his target. The black bats landed on Argos, enveloping him completely. Following that, they separated and flew back to Emlyn before vanishing. Argos's body had shrunk quite noticeably, and he finally couldn't hold out any longer. In his half-melted state, he slowly collapsed. Only then did Emlyn raise his right hand to check on the remnant pain. He saw that his palm and a few fingers had wounds that were corroding. However, the flesh inside was rapidly squirming as they healed themselves.
It's over. I actually finished him.
Emlyn retracted his gaze and looked at Argos's corpse in slight disbelief. Although this hunt had quite a few ups and downs, he hadn't encountered any real danger the entire time. This made him realize that the existence of the Tarot Club made him far stronger than he imagined.
If Argos had checked Gallus Kevin's corpse first and not noticed the newspapers and wooden chest, he definitely would have figured out that I possess beyonder powers like lightning strike. He wouldn't have used Wings of Darkness while dodging and end up being hit by the lightning. But this way, he wouldn't have discovered any abnormalities and wouldn't have made any evasive maneuvers ahead of time. My lightning strike would have struck him directly, and things would have been easier. Viewing it from this angle, no matter what happened, I would be able to kill him as long as I didn't make a mistake in my handling of matters. They're really weak. So I'm already this powerful. It's no wonder the ancestor made me join the Tarot Club. This is a gathering that prepares the various races for the impending apocalypse. It's of a much higher level than the other secret organizations.
Emlyn tipped his chin up a little as he couldn't help but curl his lips. Following that, he heard footsteps outside, but no one dared to approach.
Argos's scream must have alarmed the surrounding residents, but they wouldn't dare enter because they're afraid of trouble. However, someone will definitely report it to the police. I need to clear the scene as quickly as possible and leave.
Emlyn retracted his gaze from the door and walked to Gallus Kevin's corpse. From the pooling blood, he picked up an item the size of a fist. It was completely red in color and resembled a heart. It was expanding and contracting slightly, and its surface was translucent. He could vaguely see a liquid flowing inside, and it was none other than the beyonder characteristic of a Sequence 7 vampire of the apothecary pathway.
This is my trophy.
Emlyn momentarily felt unaccustomed to it. After calming himself, he wrapped the beyonder characteristic and Gallus Kevin's head with the old newspapers and stuffed it into the wooden chest. After placing the wooden chest to the side, he yanked Argos's head, whose form looked nothing like before. He then took out another bottle of medicine and scattered in every corner of the room. During this process, Emlyn wasn't flustered at all. It was as though he wasn't worried that the official beyonders in Eastborough would rush over. A few minutes later, he picked up Argos's mutated Beyonder characteristic, glancing at its surface, which was nearly black in color, and the indistinct human-faced patterns. Behind him, a black gas was emanated. The black gas transformed into countless tiny bats again as they flew within the room. They combined with the potion liquid that had been sprayed earlier, forming a silent black flame that spread outwards. The black flames burned away the blood and corpse as well as the traces of the lightning strikes. All that was left was a layer of sticky liquid that resembled asphalt covering the different objects in the room. Then these liquid bodies turned into heavy black bats as they spiraled around Emlyn's body. Emlyn didn't have extravagant hopes that his actions could completely interfere in subsequent investigations. He only had one goal: to make the situation look okay. This made the police or official Beyonders who took on the case write off the matter as something of little value. After a simple investigation, they would file it away and not pay any further attention to it. After doing all of this, Emlyn, with his cap and blackened face, surveyed the room. Following that, he bowed slightly at the crimson moon. Meanwhile, he flipped the pages of Lemanos' travels and had it stop at teleportation. Emlyn's figure, along with the heavy bats, immediately turned transparent and formless as he vanished from the spot. After nearly 15 minutes, a few policemen from East Borough rushed in. They crashed through the door but didn't discover any residents or corpses. They yawned languidly and forced the onlooking residents to admit that they had been hallucinating, thus ending the investigation. This was the efficiency and style of the East Borough police. After leaving East Borough, Emlyn first headed home and hid Lemanos' travels. Then, with his spoils, he headed straight for Odora's house in West Borough. He wanted to declare his victory and claim his reward. Chapter 797, Reward. Inside Odora's villa, Emlyn saw Cosme, who was also a baron like he was. This sanguine, who seemed like a man in his prime, was Nibs Odora's spokesperson.
I'm also a baron, and one that recently achieved adulthood at that.
Emlyn mumbled inwardly. He got up from the sofa in the activity room and bowed.
Good evening, my lord.
Cosme was just about to say something when his nose twitched. He then cast his gaze towards the wooden chest beside Emlyn's feet.
The smell of fresh blood?
As he asked in puzzlement, he seemed to connect the dots and added after a second of thought.
You killed another target?
Emlyn curled his lips and shook his head.
No.
Then, before Cosme could ask further, his smile turned profound.
Not one, but two.
Two? The middle-aged gentleman was taken aback as he watched Emlyn bend down to open the lid. During this process, Emlyn's facial muscles winced a little as this series of actions had touched the wound on his right hand. Holding back the change in his expression, Emlyn allowed his arm to hang down slightly, allowing the chest to tilt and reveal its contents to the sanguine baron opposite him. Two charred, bloody heads were stuffed inside a pile of old newspapers. By the side were two transparent objects which resembled hearts, one red with vitality and the other nearly black. This impactful scene was reflected in Cosme's eyes as he looked up in surprise, staring at Emlyn blankly as he blurted,
You did this?
Although he had only managed to recognize one head being Gallus Kevin's, but the two vampire Beyonder characteristics couldn't be faked. Emlyn put down the wooden chest and allowed his right hand to hang down naturally. Surreptitiously, he flicked his right hand very slightly along the corners of his trousers as he replied with a smile,
Of course, this is the thing. After receiving the £7,000 reward back then, I bought a particular baron's legacy at a particular Beyonder gathering. With it, I advanced. I don't wish to use money to satisfy the murderers who hunt us sanguine, but I didn't wish for this legacy to land in the hands of others. Besides, the seller wasn't necessarily the hunter.
Taking this opportunity, Emlyn revealed the fact that he had already become a baron. Furthermore, every word he said was the truth. This was a technique he had learned from the Tarot Club.
I long knew that you were a baron. Do you think your frequent purchases of all kinds of items with spirituality and the borrowing of books that explain potions would go unnoticed? If it weren't because of certain factors, we would have questioned you long ago. What I'm surprised about is your combat ability. You don't even have a single mystical item, and with you only wishing to buy dolls, it's not easy to hunt 2 artificial vampires without causing a commotion, even for a baron. Even I would need to make plenty of preparations and acquire detailed intelligence before it's possible. Without anyone noticing it, Emlyn is already this strong?
Cosmiodora couldn't help but lampoon as he revealed a fake smile.
So that's the reason. Emlyn, why did you hide it from us? Don't you wish to be addressed as Lord by the other Sanguine?
Emlyn glanced at the Sanguine's expression and tilted his chin.
I was planning on telling everyone, but since there was the hunting competition, I decided to give everyone a surprise. Cosmi, I've already hunted 3 of the primordial moon believers, and you gave 5 targets. Does this mean that I've won?
He couldn't wait to change his form of address from Lord to Tichi. Cosmi's eyelids twitched as he chuckled.
Yes, that's right. You can ignore the 2 other targets. Leave it to Rusbathry and the rest. This way, they might still be eligible for a consolation prize.
Having said that, Cosmi found his attitude a little too cold, so he hurriedly asked in concern,
Were you injured?
A little.
Emlyn raised his right arm and stretched his fingers. To be frank, on his hunt that night, the worst injury he suffered was after he teleported out of East Burrow. He had ripped apart his skin to wipe his blood across the cover of Lemano's Travels. Cosmi didn't develop the topic, as he said, after a few seconds of silence.
Congratulations on being the victor of this hunting competition. You will receive 2 prizes. First, if there's a chance to become a Viscount in the future, you will enter the final list of candidates, receiving free help for the ritual. Second, you will obtain a mystical item. It's a ring personally created by the ancestor. Although it doesn't contain any godhood, it possesses potent and very mystical powers. As the ancestor didn't name it, we all call it Lilith's ring. Also, according to convention, these 2 Beyonder characteristics will belong to the entire Sanguine race. This way, we might be able to have 2 more newborns, and you would receive £3,000 in cash in return.
A ring personally created made by the ancestor. Although Emlyn was somewhat disappointed that the reward wasn't a Viscount's Beyonder characteristic, with it only being candidature and a free ritual, the ring made by Sanguine ancestor Lilith herself was enough to put things right. To a proud Sanguine with a sense of racial superiority, this was the highest form of honor. As his joy was quelled, Emlyn, who had participated in several tarot gatherings and had completed 2 hunts, felt that things weren't that simple.
I was sent by the ancestor to Mr. Fool, and now I'm receiving a ring from the ancestor? Isn't that too much of a coincidence?
Emlyn thought for a moment and couldn't figure out the answer. He finally decided to pray to Mr. Fool later, describe the entire situation, and see what advice he could give him. Noticing that Emlyn's joy had subsided and that he had remained silent for more than 10 seconds, Cosmi cleared his throat.
That ring and the cash will be given to you tomorrow. When the time comes, I'll summon Rusbathry and Company, officially announcing your victory in this hunting competition. Then, the ring will be given to you.
No problem.
Although Emlyn lacked the experience in such matters, he knew that rewards couldn't be given in private. It needed to be given in front of all the participants. Without staying any longer, he bade farewell and left Odora's villa in a rental carriage. As the carriage slowly drove off, Emlyn took a look at the crimson moon which was hanging silently in the sky. His mind gradually calmed as he couldn't help but recall everything that happened that very day. From that, he concluded lessons and gained experience. Finally, he began counting how many Beyonder powers he needed to record onto Lemano's Travels.
I used all of the 5 lightning strikes. 1 teleportation, 1 door opening, 1 astromancy. A total of 8 times. In addition to that, I need to pay 2 additional powers, making it 10. 10. This will be a little difficult. There are some Beyonder powers that probably can't be recorded. For example, my self-recovery powers. I can only repeat them. After I obtain the Ancestor's Ring, I can try recording the Beyonder powers it possesses.
Lilith's ring? Above the gray fog in the palace that looked like a giant's residence, Klein sat in the high-back chair belonging to the fool as he quietly pondered over Emlyn White's prayer. He had originally imagined that he would be woken up in the middle of the night, having to provide a particular inexperienced vampire help, but to his surprise, Emlyn had finished everything by 11 and had even submitted the mission in. Back then, Emlyn prayed to the fool because of a revelation from the ancient god Lilith. Now he has received her ring.
Regardless of who Lilith is, I need to be wary and observe.
Klein seriously contemplated for a few seconds before replying to Emlyn's prayer in a staid manner.
When praying to me or participating in the gathering in the future, take off that ring.
After giving his instructions, Klein returned to the real world. Without worrying about being woken up in the middle of the night, he slept till daybreak. After breakfast and taking a rest, it was time for his etiquette lessons with Wahana. It was a special lesson for the ball he was hosting at his residence on the weekend. Wahana's soft black hair flowed as the ends of her dress twirled, while she led Dwayne Dantes into familiarizing himself with the opening dance. In the brisk and comforting music, this etiquette teacher suddenly said,
"I heard Ma'am Mary visited you yesterday afternoon."
Yes.
As Klein poignantly reflected on how there weren't any secrets in the world of social networks, he nodded frankly. Wahana nodded gently and said after 2 seconds of silence,
"I heard that Ma'am Mary has pledged all her shares to the bank to borrow a large sum of money."
This is a warning for me to be careful, so that I wouldn't fall into a scam. The help I previously provided had not only allowed me to quickly enter the social circles in Bulkland Street, but it has also continuously brought me benefits. However, Ma'am Mary's pledging of shares was to secretly acquire more shares.
Klein listened in silence before revealing a warm smile.
Thank you.
He paused and added,
I believe in the character of every friend, but in the field of business, caution is forever the first principle. I've already gotten Walter to hire an independent lawyer and accounting team to perform the due diligence and come up with a proposal that can protect my interests and avoid taxes in the best way possible. Before that, I won't make any decisions.
Wahana raised her head a little and looked into Dwayne Dantes's deep blue eyes before suddenly sighing with a laugh.
"You truly are a wise person."
Klein originally wanted to attribute it to maturity, but thinking back to how Wahana's husband had previously been in a scam over his cloth, and he had only managed to reduce his losses thanks to him, such an answer easily made her imagine things and make comparisons. Since it would appear like a mockery, he changed his excuse and said with a chuckle,
My wisdom comes from the lessons I've received in the past.
It's hard to imagine you being duped.
Wahana chuckled as she lowered her head.
Is it due to all your experiences that you can appreciate the different kinds of charms for all kinds of ladies?
When is this rumor ever going to end?
Klein said with a helpless smile.
Every flower has something beautiful about it.
After familiarizing himself with the entire process and the corresponding dance, Klein walked Wahana out. Together with his valet Richardson, he took up Ma'am Mary's invitation and headed for the Coin Company in Sherwood Borough. Chapter 798. Revisiting an Old Haunt. Sherwood Borough, outside the Coin Company. When Klein alighted from the carriage, he looked around as if he had never been here before, as though everything had a strong sense of novelty. In fact, he wasn't a stranger to the area. He knew that opposite the street was the Gardley department store where the middle class enjoyed patronizing, and that there was a shop not far away that was famous for its specialty Desi pies. He had once spent a considerable amount of time here waiting for Dorrigu Gale to tail him so as to obtain evidence to his acts of adultery. Retracting his gaze, Klein walked towards the Coin Company with Richardson. Ma'am Mary and her lady's maid were already waiting there. In the relatively conservative Lowen Kingdom, a lady's servant had to be of the same sex, otherwise it would result in nasty gossip, affecting her social relationships and marriage. Therefore, even though Ma'am Mary's lady's maid needed to play the role of her secretary to a certain extent, with her understanding societal etiquette, commercial knowledge, and having a certain level of negotiation skill, all she could do was select from women with good education or with relevant working experience without considering any men. Similarly, gentlemen needed to have valets and commercial secretaries of the same sex. Of course, even so, there were always people who couldn't rein themselves in and engaged in immoral acts. Every year there were cases of servants and their employers having relations. Amongst them, the maids were mostly the victims. They were either cheated, forced, or enticed to become the male employer's lover. When they were eventually discovered, they would be fired, losing their jobs. Then, their reputation would be destroyed, making them ineligible options for servants again. Many a time, they had to become prostitutes. Ma'am Mary welcomed him with a smile.
Good afternoon, Dwayne.
Klein bowed and said,
Good afternoon, ma'am. It really is a flourishing area.
Such a topic was roughly equivalent to talking about the weather. After Mary exchanged pleasantries with him, she led Dwayne Dantes through the coin company's entrance and said with a smile,
Later, there will be professionals giving you an explanation as they show you around. After about half an hour, head on up. I've prepared a buffet and invited a few friends in different circles.
Friends in different circles. This is her trying to expand my social circle. Very sincere.
Klein nodded slightly and said,
As someone not from the area, I always look forward to knowing more friends, having just come to Backland.
Ma'am Mary replied politely,
No, you're nothing like that. If I had the liberty of saying it, you're a true Backland gentleman who has received excellent education.
As they conversed, they passed through the door and entered the reception area, which had excellent lighting. A stocky man in a suit with a beautiful mustache stood there waiting, Vaco. Mary introduced him to Dwayne Dantes.
This is Luke Sammer. He is our coin company's first manager.
Actually, I know him.
Klein looked at Luke and nodded with a smile. To him, Luke Sammer was a rather staid, professional gentleman. He enjoyed machinery and was a very gentlemanly person at banquets. He didn't belittle the poor detective who had yet to make a name for himself, nor did he deliberately curry favor with the few mid-ranking civil servants of the Backland Municipal Department that lived on Minsk Street. Mary said to Luke,
This is my friend, Dwayne Dantes. He's interested in anthracite and high-quality charcoal. Help me give him a detailed explanation.
Luke, who had been informed ahead of time, took a step forward and looked at the tycoon from Desi Bay. He gave a warm smile and said respectfully,
Mr. Dantes, this is the Coin Company's headquarters. We have long-term agreements with several anthracite mines. We supply Sherwood, Hillston, North and West Borough with anthracite and high-quality charcoal, satisfying 30% of their overall demand. We also have the chance of clinching a huge contract with the Navy.
I've never seen Luke with such an expression.
Klein followed him around Coin Company with an unperturbed expression as he listened to Luke introduce the various areas. From time to time, he would inquire without expressing his attitude. Half an hour later, they went up to the second floor and entered a huge meeting room, an étagère. The place was already set up, with tables clinging close to the walls. Plates of food were randomly placed on them, with mainly ham, smoked meat, sausages, bread, salad, cakes, pudding, and other cold dishes. However, there were a few hot dishes. Just as he stepped in, Dwayne Dantes was introduced to two men who were talking close to Mary.
This is reporter Mike Joseph from the Daily Observer. This is an excellent surgeon, Dr. Aaron Cyrus. In Backland, you will often need them.
As Klein listened to Mary, he smiled at the two gentlemen, the corners of his lips nearly twitching.
These are all friends I'm very familiar with. Well, I'm even more familiar with the fetus in the womb of Aaron's wife. Why does that sound wrong?
As Klein lampooned, he patiently waited for Mary to introduce Dwayne Dantes to the two men before politely greeting Mike and Aaron. Mike Joseph didn't look much different from last year. He had thin brows, rough skin, and charming blue eyes. As for Aaron Cyrus, although he was intrinsically a cold and reserved person, he didn't make it obvious. Everything that happened in the recent half-year had been smooth for him. In terms of mood and confidence, he was riding a high. Upon hearing that Dantes was a tycoon from Desi, Mike took out his name card and handed it over with a smile.
You don't mind me advertising, right? If you wish to publish an advertisement, find me. Be it the Daily Observer or the Tussock Times, I can provide you with a discounted price.
As he spoke, Mike winked, indicating that he was joking.
You are nothing but a reporter with all these fake identification documents. Why didn't you mention the discount price advertisements to Sherlock Moriarty in the past? You were looking down on the detective, were you?
Klein lampooned and exchanged name cards with him.
I've always had such needs.
Following that, he turned to Aaron and handed another name card to him.
I was recently ill and recovered only recently. I'm very aware of how important a doctor is.
I'm a surgeon, so I believe you wouldn't wish to meet me that much.
Despite saying so, Aaron still received the name card.
No, I'd love to meet you. I even wish to join the party of your child's birth.
Klein mumbled, deliberately leading the conversation to the field of medicine and having a good conversation with Mike and Aaron. He had previously been stressing over how to close ties with Aaron to re-establish connections with a particular unborn fetus. After all, the paper crane was about to tear at any moment, making it unusable for even one more attempt. As for Sherlock Moriarty, it was difficult for him to openly appear in Backland to pay Aaron a visit, much less participate in the birth party.
There aren't any problems now. With Ma'am Mary's introduction, I can very naturally get close to Aaron. When the time comes, I'll definitely be invited. Hey, I might even be made the godfather of a particular snake of Mercury. After all, we are all believers of the goddess. Will this make a particular fetus angry? I better be careful. I definitely wouldn't mention this unless Aaron mentions it.
Klein thought in delight. He skillfully held himself back without appearing overly passionate on their first meeting. After a simple chat, he was introduced to the other guests by Mary. During this process, Klein didn't forget to get some food and water, making him appear to easily adapt himself to the environment. After completing a round, Mary stopped and said, after some deliberation,
Everyone here is my friend.
This means that you didn't invite anyone from the other camp, and you are also including me as your friend?
Klein nodded gently.
I probably shouldn't ask as a gentleman, but as a businessman, I need to know who is the person, or who are the people, vying for the Coin Company's controlling share rights.
Mary fell silent for 2 seconds.
Baron Sindris and his friends. They wish to publicly list the Coin Company and earn the sky-high evaluation that will eventually happen. They're completely unconcerned with the company's future development.
Baron Sindris, one of the richest men in Lowen. By donating to the Conservative Party, he became an aristocrat, and is a banker, factory owner, and a powerful businessman. It's hard to tell where he stands, so even though he relied on the Conservative Party to obtain his aristocratic title, he's more aligned with the new party while being biased towards merchants.
Klein thought and asked with a smile.
Why didn't you get that Mr. Hall to help? His father is a powerful noble and banker. He should be able to provide you with the necessary help.
Mary said with a wry smile.
Mr. Hall doesn't wish to involve himself in this matter. He claims to be the chief secretary of the National Atmospheric Pollution Council, so he can't be involved in commercial activities that deal with anthracite or charcoal.
A man whose true ambitions lie in politics. However, he probably doesn't wish to be at odds with Baron Sindris. If I were to choose another butler back then, I'd likely have established ties with Baron Sindris. He's so rich, so if he really wants to raise the price, I wouldn't be able to beat him. Will a trope of him using money to crush me appear?
Klein didn't ask further, as he said,
I will wait for the investigation report.
Realizing that Dwayne Dantes wasn't directly backing out, Mary said with slight gratitude,
In this age, chivalrous people are already few and far between. You are one of them.
Klein smiled without promising anything. After the buffet was over, he began returning to Northborough on his high-end, four-wheeled carriage. As he daydreamed while looking out the window, Klein suddenly said to Richardson,
Turn towards St. Samuel Cathedral.
He had failed to figure out the exact answer to the reason for the anomaly in the cathedral, which was later quelled. This made him wonder if he should find a chance to make contact with the keepers. He also remembered that every afternoon there would at least be a keeper who prayed to the goddess in the prayer hall.
How should I make contact? In that environment, even a conversation will appear noisy, and this will easily incur the suspicion of others.
Klein frowned slightly as he decided to observe before coming up with a solution. The carriage didn't change direction as it continued driving towards Bokland Street, but it didn't stop and instead continued past it. Inside the carriage, Klein closed his eyes to calm his slightly anxious feelings. Chapter 799, Spying, Northborough, St. Samuel Cathedral. Just as Klein entered the main prayer hall, he used the points of light that shone from the back of the altar to survey his surroundings, taking in all the believers inside. In one glance, Klein rapidly locked onto a target. He followed the aisle and walked forward without showing any abnormal signs. In the first row was an elder wearing a black clergyman's robe, but he exuded a cold aura. His face was pale, and his hair was withered and yellow. He had his eyes closed tightly as he prayed with great focus. He was one of the keepers that Klein had previously sensed. Bashakol, his shift is usually on Friday. Klein didn't approach him and instead sat 2 pews away from him. After finding a spot to sit down, he handed over his hat and cane to Richardson. Then, while sitting down, he tapped his left thumb on the first segment of his index finger twice, silently activating his spirit-body thread's vision. Suddenly, black illusory threads appeared in front of Klein as they densely extended out of different spirit bodies, endlessly. Having just taken his seat, Klein shifted his gaze, casting it onto the keeper. He nearly exclaimed from what he saw, but thanks to his self-control as a clown and his ability to expect abnormal situations, he managed to relax and maintain his staid attitude. In his vision, although the yellow-haired elder had spirit-body threads extending out, his body was entirely black in color on the inside, as the darkness swallowed the origins of the illusory threads in a way that was completely different from ordinary beyonders.
Indeed, they have already been eroded by the core seal, causing a mutation at the level of the soul. From the looks of it, the problem is closer to my second guess. They are, in a sense, part of the core seal. Once they show signs of losing control, they will immediately trigger the item's instinctive reaction that forcefully quells them. It's no wonder the keepers need to be a voluntary role and be advanced in their years. They probably understand the outcome.
Klein sighed as he prepared to deactivate his spirit-body threads, senses, and retract his gaze. At this moment, he saw a pair of eyes. They were black without any emotions within. Beside the eyes, there were pronounced wrinkles that extended bit by bit, as though they were distorted, strange, mysterious symbols. They were the keeper's eyes. At some point in time, he had straightened his body, turned around, and looked blankly at Dwayne Dantes. Klein's scalp instantly went numb as he forced a smile and nodded at him as though it was a normal meeting of eyes. The keeper slowly moved his head as a response. Then, Klein felt as though he was extracted from his surroundings as things turned blurry before turning clear. At that instant, he knew that he had been pulled into a dream. Hence, as he maintained his image as Dwayne Dantes, he sized up his surroundings, only to realize that he was still inside St. Samuel Cathedral. However, all the pews were either damaged or overturned and strewn everywhere. It looked as though it had met with a raid. The altar up ahead was filled with cracks and weeds. The thick layer of dust made it seem like it had been in such desolate condition since a long time ago. The keeper, with yellow, withered hair, was in front of the collapsed donation box, coldly staring at Dwayne Dantes, who was suited in black. Upon seeing Klein look over, he widened his mouth to reveal white, sharp, irregular teeth, and these teeth were embedded with blurry, indistinct, and tiny figures. They had complete facial features and limbs, and their expressions were different, but were colored with the same pain as though they were imprisoned there and unable to escape. Grunt! The keeper's throat let out a growl that sounded like a beast as his back hunched over. By his spine and waist, his clothes swelled as 4 blood vessel-covered arms without any skin grew out. Right on the heels of that, they grew fine black hair, as the tips of his fingers grew sharp nails with a smacking sound. In just 3 short seconds, the keeper, who looked normal, had turned into an 8-legged monster that sprawled on the ground. It looked like a spider that had silently woven its web in the night while awaiting its prey, and also like a deformed black wolf that struck intense fear into one's heart. Meanwhile, 2 gigantic palms filled with black hair extended out of the desolate altar without any warning. They pressed onto the sides as black gas condensed into slippery tentacles that extended in every direction. Soon, they filled the entire prayer hall. The aura that left him trembling, the extreme sense of fear, and the huge, illusory figure were penetrating an invisible barrier as they manifested more clearly.
He lost control? That keeper lost control?
Klein stood there, subconsciously wishing to react and use his uniqueness to forcibly escape the dream. But suddenly, he figured out the series of events that had happened. His expression changed as he wore a terrified expression as he ran to the door. Trembling, it looked like he was struggling in a dream. In the time it took to take a breath, a dark chill spread out from the outside world like a tidal wave, inundating the entire dream and quelling everything. Klein snapped his eyes open and realized that he had fallen asleep at some point in time. As for the yellow-haired keeper, he had long turned his head to continue praying. Duane Dantes's eyes darted around as he looked around in horror as though he was still immersed in the dream and unable to escape the horror that had gripped him. After nearly a minute, he took 2 deep breaths and looked at the sacred emblem again, drawing a sign of the crimson moon on his chest. Only then did Klein have the time to recall the experience he had, and began speculating as to what had happened.
As I had spied on his spirit body threads, it caused him to show signs of losing control, thus causing an excessive reaction by pulling me into a dream and attempting to deal with me. Later, the core seal behind Chana's gate sensed the anomaly and quelled the problem. Now the crux of the matter is if the keeper still remembers the source of his near mutation. If he's already used to it, he should find the cause of the problem very vague considering his present state. Of course, it might not be my problem. Perhaps he was already on the brink of losing control.
Klein looked at the elder once again to observe what he would do next to determine how he should react.
If all else fails, I'll directly use creeping hunger and escape with traveling.
Klein rapidly made up his mind as he patiently waited for the possible repercussions. A few minutes later, he saw Bishop Electra walk in from the side door towards him. Klein's heart tightened as he spread open his left fingers in preparation to activate creeping hunger. At that moment, he suddenly had an idea and stopped his actions.
If the keeper has already informed the bishops about my problematic situation via a dream, I would be the victim of a collective assault by the church's beyonders. After all, pulling me into a dream can avoid harming the other believers. Therefore, they have no need to find a bishop I'm familiar with to come over. It's likely more to extend their regards and to placate me.
Klein retracted his gaze and continued a praying pose. In less than a minute, he finally sensed someone approach as he looked up and saw Bishop Electra softly say,
"You don't look too well?"
I fell asleep without realizing it and had a nightmare. I still feel a little afraid.
Klein said with a self-deprecating smile. Bishop Electra sat beside him and said in a staid manner,
Dreams are sometimes the manifestation of the fear within you. You will feel better as long as you sincerely pray to the goddess and consume holy water. Of course, the most important thing is to not suppress yourself usually. Learn to confess to the goddess. At times, wailing in secret can reduce a lot of your stress.
Klein secretly observed the bishop's attitude and read his tone before heaving a sigh of relief.
I understand.
He cast his gaze forward again, bowed his head, and clasped his hands to begin praying silently. While doing so, he saw the keeper in front of him stand up and walk to the side door where a bishop was waiting.
Phew!
Klein silently exhaled as he truly became one with the serene environment. Suddenly, he heard a voice that was his, but it wasn't something that he could control. Did you think what you did was well hidden? No, not at all. Have you forgotten that you've touched the Evernight Goddess's holy artifact? Chapter 800, Psychologically Becoming Better. Who is it? Who is the one speaking? Klein's muscles tensed up as he nearly opened his eyes. At that moment, his back oozed with sweat that soaked his shirt. What he was most alarmed of wasn't the word said, but that it directly sounded in his heart and had modulated the voice to sound exactly like his.
Although I maintained my lucidity in that dream, I still had my spirit body tainted by his psyche that was on the verge of losing control. Or is someone using that keeper to pass me a message?
Countless guesses ran through Klein's mind. Finally, combining the contents of what was said and his own situation, he came up with a preliminary judgment.
The number of people who knows about my identity as Klein Moretti is few to begin with. Likewise for those who know that Klein Moretti had once sworn an oath while touching a holy artifact. Furthermore, there's almost no intersection between the two. Mr. Azek had heard me mention the former matter before, but if he wants to give me any reminders, he can directly do it through a messenger. There's no need to use such a frightening method. Will Septon might know. After all, he's a snake of Mercury who represents fate. But by the same logic, he can directly contact me. Of course, I can eliminate the possibility that he suddenly had the thought of frightening me. I just thought in the afternoon about having a chance of becoming his godfather. The Antigonus family's notebook had corrupted the keeper, just like how it used the misfortune cloth puppet to deliver the symbol. But if it really is the Antigonus family's notebook, why didn't it just give me the potion formula directly? Or try negotiating with me to help in a notebook jailbreak? St. Samuel Cathedral is the headquarters of the Backland Diocese, making it at a higher level than St. Selena Cathedral. That notebook shouldn't have the ability to do anything further. It should be securely sealed. Apart from them, there is only one entity who is aware of both matters, the Evernight Goddess. However, with a deity's pride, she has no need to pretend to act as a passerby to call me out with a polite and a strange tone. I'm in St. Samuel Cathedral, so all she needs to do is produce a revelation, and dozens of beyonders will appear to mow me down. And as a diocese headquarters, with sufficient preparation, they can probably disrupt traveling. Therefore, there's no need to go through so much trouble. There's still one more person who's aware of both matters. That's myself. Before planning my operation, I've actually considered the corresponding problem. Back then, my conclusion was that I didn't need to worry too much about it, because only after advancing to Faceless will some of the Grey Fog's powers enter the real world, allowing certain demigods to sense my uniqueness. Before this, only Beyonders from the Monster Pathway could discover a tiny bit of my uniqueness, and back when I touched the Holy Sword and made that oath, I had yet to become a clown. Just because of the secret connection established from the oath, it made the goddess slowly sense something about me. It's been so long, and I haven't seen her take any action. That female angel, she should be an angel. She had even smiled at me when she wiped away Mr. A. Therefore, the goddess might be happy to see me take away the Antigonus family's notebook. Although I'm not sure of her motives, I can only accept it and subsequently think of ways to deal with it at my current level. This is ultimately safer than climbing the main peak of the Hornassus mountain range. Of course, that's built on the premise that the lady which wiped away Mr. A is an angel of the church. Although I had undergone all kinds of acting during the Faceless stage and got to know myself well, I've consumed additional potions without completely digesting them. And Marionettis requires every marionette to adhere to a specific persona. This also easily causes a personality dissociation. Also, to steal the Antigonus family's notebook and to act as Dwayne Dantes, I'm under immense stress. I am subconsciously wavering and am suspicious. In this state, the Keeper's corrupted psyche of nearly losing control had agitated my spirit body, causing me to have a split personality.
Just as Klein thought of this, a familiar yet unfamiliar voice resounded in his mind again.
Your considerations are too idealized. All of your actions are fundamentally all thanks to luck. If that high-ranking deacon Crested Sesamir, male, with the Holy Sword was here in Backland to handle Beyonder cases, can you guarantee that the Holy Sword wouldn't sense you when you are in the same cathedral? Both of you are linked by an oath.
If Deacon Sesamir were to come, I'll abandon this plan. Besides, it's also not possible to avoid it ahead of time. I'll find an excuse or reason to be out of town for some time.
Klein mumbled inwardly. Then he heard the voice belonging to himself sound in his mind.
This makes it a situation prone to Too many accidents and unpredictable developments. Before coming to the cathedral, didn't you also not consider that the mere observation of spirit-body threads would result in a mutation?
My nervousness back then was the anxiety that something happened beyond my expectations. However, as it's a mere observation without me making any direct contact, I didn't believe that there would be too great a problem. I should be more cautious in the future. Also, accidents and developments exist for everything. Who exactly are you?
Klein closed his eyes as he pretended to focus on praying. The voice hesitated and said,
I'm Klein, you are Joe Mingui. No, Joe Mingui, you are Klein.
Indeed. Klein felt his hair stand on end once again. He decided to leave St. Samuel Cathedral immediately, return home, and resolve the problem of his character dissociation.
When the symptoms first appear, the situation is easier to resolve. Once the other personality stabilizes and becomes stronger, it will begin to snatch control of the body. I might even need external help when that happens.
He opened his eyes and looked at Electra, male, with a tranquil expression.
I feel like I've calmed down. Ever since I got a mental illness, my mind is a lot better.
As he spoke, Klein inwardly gave a self-deprecating comment. He enjoyed lampooning, partially because it was in his character to do so, and partially to enforce his personality. It was ultimately to remind himself who he was, so as not to lose himself to his acting. Bishop Electra, male, smiled.
May the goddess bless you.
As he spoke, he took a cup of water from a priest's hand and passed it to Duane Dantes. Without any explanation needed, Klein knew that it was holy water. He often drank it in the past. Hence, hiding his anxiety, he received it in a composed manner and downed it. A refreshing feeling slushed down his throat, jolting his mind as he became a lot more awake. Even the voice in his mind weakened.
This has the effect of placating the spirit body. The Church does view Duane Dantes with great importance. Of course, this is created by their beyonders.
As Klein nodded at Bishop Electra, male, he drew the sign of the Crimson Moon and staidly walked to the altar and donated £50 into the donation box. After doing everything, he led Richardson and left the cathedral, riding the carriage back to Beauclin Street. On his trip back, he didn't feed the pigeons, because an ordinary person who had just encountered something would hardly have the peace of mind to do so. After returning home, the silent Klein used the excuse of an afternoon nap to dismiss his servants. In his master bedroom's bathroom, he took 4 steps counterclockwise and headed above the gray fog. Passing through the roars and ravings, he didn't feel his body be purified. He was increasingly certain that the voice in his mind originated from himself. It was a result of being corrupted and agitated, causing a character dissociation. Sitting in the high-back chair of the fool, Klein immediately studied his spirit-body situation. He discovered that there were some signs of chaos without it being pure. The corresponding aura colors were somewhat spotted. After seriously contemplating for 2 minutes and ignoring the echoing noise in his head, Klein conjured the world German sparrow, male, and made him devoutly pray.
Honorable Mr. Fool, please inform the moon, male, that I wish to rent the mental terror candle for half a day. I know he has the means of obtaining it.
Very early on, his identity as the world had been prepared for Sherlock Moriarty, so Klein wasn't worried about it. South of the bridge, Harvest Church. Emlyn White, male, who was anticipating his obtaining of Lilith's ring in the evening, suddenly saw the endless gray fog and heard the world. Alarmed, Emlyn White, male, muttered in silence.
How does he know that I can get the mental terror candle?